It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Daniel Grothe, and we're going to be discussing his brand new book, Chasing Wisdom, The Lifelong Pursuit of Living Well. Daniel, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
Shaun, thanks so much. You've been doing great work through the years. I've been reading up on your podcast and checking out your stuff. You do really good work, so I'm happy to be here.
Appreciate the kind words. And honestly, for me, I am an endlessly curious fellow, and it's an honor. It's a joy for me to talk to authors about all the hard work they do to produce great books. And we're going to get to the new book in a moment. But first, I want to give the listeners, the viewers, an opportunity to get to know a bit about you. So let's kick off our conversation with a bit of what we might call the Daniel Grothe origin story. So for like me, so many folks are encountering you for the first time. What do we need to know about you?
Well, I'm 37 years old. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm the associate senior pastor at New Life Church in Colorado. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a pastor's kid at a mega church that met on the campus of Oral Roberts University. We would set up and tear down every week. So my parents, my dad was the worship leader, my mom was the administrator of the church, and we would go show up at 6 a.m., set the church up, do 9/11 services, and then go home real quick, eat some macaroni and cheese, come back at 4 o'clock for the 6 p.m. service, finish up the service, tear the church down, pack it up at 10 p.m., go home. We had Wednesday service. I had Christian school, church, chapels, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I was in at least 6 services a week. I mean, that was just my thing. And my parents, one of the things that they did, that when I think about my origin, is they took me into nursing homes all the time. There was a nursing home right by our church, and we would go in, we'd pull into the parking lot, and I have 3 sisters. They would park the car, turn around to the back seat and look at us and say, okay, we're going to go in there. You're going to see people many of them will be slumped over in wheelchairs. They'll have drool coming down their face. They won't be able to talk to you. They've lost their memory. Don't go, ooh. You go over, there's a Kleenex box in every room. You get a Kleenex. You wipe the drool from their face. You dignify them. You say, hi, I'm Daniel Grothe. What's your name? You talk to them. You ask them really good questions. These are people who have fought in wars. These are people who've lived through the Great Depression. These are people who have figured out how to live, and they've got stories that you need to draw out. So if you go in here and you don't draw those stories out, you will be the poorer for it. So go in, here's how you look someone in the eye, you shake their hand, you ask them a question, you dignify them, yes, sir, no, ma'am. And so I thought every 4, 5, 6-year-old was doing that. I thought that was normal, hospital visits. And so as a pastor's kid, my parents took me along with them. It wasn't something, though, that they drug me into. It wasn't their job that I had to sort of tag along to. They led us in such a way that this is our family call. We're the Grothes. This is what we do. And so I fell in love with it from day one. Growing up in God's house, I had aunties and uncles and grandparents in the faith, the extended family, what a church can be. And I was getting kissed on the cheek and, had 25 people who could correct me. And I knew that they had authority from my parents. And so to me, it was just growing up in this group of saints and sages, these people who have lived and learned from God. And my parents taught me how to draw those stories out of them. So that's a bit of my origin story.
And another thing, maybe another thread I'd like to pull on is in terms of being a pastor's kid, I often find people go in one of 2 directions. They want absolutely nothing to do with ministry. And ironically, then many of them end up coming into the ministry anyways. And others just, it's in their DNA. It was part of their family and culture of upbringing, and they plan to go into ministry from their very start. So in terms of you deciding to respond to the call of being a pastor and going into ministry, was that something you knew from an early age?
I think so. The instincts were there. You look back in hindsight and you think, well, what a perfect ecosystem to grow up in for the way God has gifted me and wired me. I think it took me into college, my sophomore year of college, where I woke up one day thinking, you know what? This isn't the family business. You should not go into ministry because it's the family business. That's a desecration. And I've had many people who are older saints tell me, only go into ministry if God demands you. do it. Like this is not something that's glamorous that you should run into. But if God makes you, if God won't let you not be in the ministry, then obey. And so my sophomore year of college, I just thought, you know what, the way I am made, I think that my gifts, my calling, my grace, whatever is like suited for this work. And so then I was able to put my chips on the table and choose it. But my parents, here's the thing about my parents. They didn't give me anything to push off of. And I think a lot of kids in ministry, they watch their parents be their best selves on Sundays in front of the people. And then they get home and they're tyrants, or they're mean, or they're disengaged, or they're sloppy. Or they're just, yeah, they give their kids something to go, wait, if you're like that on Sunday, but Monday through Saturday, we see a different side of you. No, thank you. My parents, they lived the same life Sunday through Saturday, and they invited us into it. They let us put our hands on the work. And I just encourage you, whatever you do, I'm not just talking about people who are in ministry, but whatever God has given you to do, if you're a parent. Shaun, I know you got 10 kids. You let your kids put their hands on it. You let them learn alongside of you. It doesn't mean they're going to become what you are, but it means that the thing God has given you to do, you're allowing them to practice their craft and to grow and to take chances and to experiment in the safety of your development and under your household, so that when they go out into the world, they've got some chops. So I loved how my parents let us put our hands on it. They brought us along. They told us that this was our family call, not just their job. And I didn't have anything to rebel against.
Daniel, another unique aspect of your origin story, your journey, is that you had really what I would say is a blessing to spend time and connect with Eugene Peterson over an extended period of time. You were in a season where the church had gone through some traumatic situations. You end up reading a Eugene Peterson book and writing him a letter. And then this unexpected path to friendship and relationship opens up. Talk to us about how that journey with Eugene Peterson got started.
Absolutely. I graduated Oral Roberts University in Tulsa at 22 years old, got married a couple weeks later, and then moved to Colorado Springs to start working at New Life. So 15 years ago, we showed up here, married 12 days, excited, got one car, a little apartment. We thought we had the world on a string, this young couple. And New Life, when I got here, we were riding high. I mean, we were high on the hog. And I say that sort of tongue in cheek and with a great sense of irony. Our senior pastor was the president of the National Association of Evangelicals, which is a 30 million member representative body in America, headquarters in Washington, D.C. So when Congress or the Senate was debating, legislation about same-sex marriage or about this or about that, we would speak. They would ask us, what do evangelicals think? And we'd fly out there to work from the church, and Mel Gibson came to our church to release The Passion of the Christ to 3,000 pastors who had gathered for this moment. And President George W. Bush Skyped into our pastors conference and, was joking around. Like we were a church, Barbara Walters, Tom Brokaw, everyone was coming to us. And we were having a blast until everything fell apart, and our senior pastor was caught in a scandal, and it was salacious. And we used to be on the front page of every Christian news media for all the right reasons, and now we're on the front page of every international secular news media station for all the wrong reasons. And we were on top of the world and crashed into the valley of the shadow of death overnight. We found out in that time we were $26 million in debt. We had to lay 44 people off overnight. And 10 months later, we got a new senior pastor, and we're beginning to patch back together some trust. You feel the wind at our back just a little bit again, like, oh, maybe we are going to go out into smooth waters. And on our senior pastor's 100th day in the office, I'm standing at the end of our children's hallway. Jack Hayford had just preached that morning, just a beautiful day in God's house. And all of a sudden, I hear bop, 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 bop. And a gunman came on our campus with an automatic rifle and 1,000 rounds of ammunition and just starts loading the place up with bullets. He had killed 2 teenage girls in our parking lot and ran into the building, and he's spraying everywhere. I run into our pastor's office with Jack Hayford there for lunch, and I said, "There's a shooter on campus," and we all hide and they lock the doors, the thing just goes bonkers. and a security guard ran down the hallway and stopped the guy, shot him in the leg, and he fell down and he took his own life in our children's hallway. So we've got a double murder suicide on our campus, 100 days into having a new senior pastor, and 13 months after losing our former senior pastor. So the bottom had fallen out. I just was sitting there as a 25-year-old thinking, I don't think it could get any worse. I thought we were done with this stuff, and now we find a new low. So I go into, on a Monday morning, my day off, pastors on Monday mornings are subhuman. And so I go into Goodwill, secondhand store, and I go over to the bookshelf, and there's this book on the shelf that says The Contemplative Pastor. And it said Eugene H. Peterson. I thought, I think that's the guy that translated the Message Bible. So I pull it down, look in the front cover, 99 cents. Goodwill. Okay. I go up to the front, I buy it, I go home. It's Monday, it's my day off, I got nothing to do. And I read the whole thing straight through. It's 171 pages, and I'm just coming apart at the seams saying, why have I never seen this on the page? I watched my parents live as faithful pastors. This is an articulation of the life of pastoral ministry that I know I'm supposed to live. So I wrote Eugene a letter, and I said, Dear Eugene, thank you so much. Here's where I come from, my church. Here's our history in the last 2 years. Your book brought me to life. Can I spend a day with you? I don't think, you may not be able to, that's fine. At least hear me saying thank you. But if you have a day, I'd do anything. And so I send it to his publisher, because I don't know Eugene or where he lives or how old he is. Send it to Nav Press with a cover letter. Could you please send this to Mr. Peterson? And I know my name, that they're not going to send it to him. They sent it to him. And I go to the mailbox 2.5 weeks later, and there's the letter. And it Eugene Peterson, Lakeside, Montana, 59922. What? And he says, Dear Daniel, yes, I would be willing to spend a day with you here in Montana, period. But not so fast, period. And he says, I want you to write a 3-page paper on what is church and a 3-page paper on what is pastor, to see if we even have enough common ground to begin a conversation. And then the rest of the letter, Shaun, he ripped me to shreds. He threw down the gauntlet. He was if he was going to give me a yes, it was not going to be a cheap yes. He was going to make me work for it. So that was the beginning of my relationship chasing Eugene Peterson, and it ensued with a 10-year relationship.
Well, if you had to summarize the way it shaped you, obviously that was a really intriguing beginning. But as you look back, what were the things maybe that Eugene drew out of you, and how did you emerge better or different or shifted just because of the time you spent with him?
So based on his first letter, I was sure that I was going to go out to his house. So I ended up writing my 6 pages, sent it to him. He said, oh my goodness, thank you, beautiful. Yes, we have common ground. Come on out. So I came out 507 days after I sent that first letter. So he made me read. He made me write papers. He called me. He'd say, hey, I need to take a little sabbatical. I just finished a book and I'm tired. So he took 9 months off. He had actually told me I could come, and then said, I'm just tired. So I think he was actually vetting me. And I think a good sage, one of the things about a good sage is they'll make you work for it. There are no, like I said earlier, there are no cheap yeses with a great sage. They know the value of someone rising up. They know the value of someone meeting the challenge. They know the value of putting someone through the gauntlet. And so Eugene did that for me. But based on his first letter and the long time period until I got out there, when I got out there, I was sure that I was going to find sort of a crotchety, curmudgeonly scholar who was going to, pistol whip me with the Bible and tell me why working at a mega church is, serving the devil. And if you want to have a real church, go find 300 people. I was sure that's what the interaction was going to be like. Shaun, it was anything but that. He was fatherly. He was grandfatherly. He was pastoral. He was gracious. He listened to my story. We would go on walks. The first morning, he let me stay at his house. I mean, total stranger. I mean, he should have sent me to the hotel down the road. He said, come stay with us for 3 days. So I checked in the first night, put my bag up, and at the end of the night after dinner, he said, meet me in the kitchen in the morning at 6. So you better know I set my alarm and I was up at 5:30 praying and, getting my soul ready and meet him down there at 6 a.m. And he took the oats for breakfast and soaked them in water for an hour because oats are better after you soak them in water for an hour. Like nothing is fast with Eugene Peterson, right? So he taught me how to like engage in the pace of life that he wanted to lead me in. And he was kind. One of the great stories, I've got it here, but when my mom heard that I was going to Eugene's house for the first time, she's crocheted Afghans for her whole life. And I said, Mom, I think you ought to crochet him a blanket. And she said, Really? And I said, Yeah. So I took it out on the first trip 10 years ago. And I said, Eugene, I hear you take a liturgical nap every day. And at 2 o'clock, he after lunch, after he's done his work for the morning, he lays down on the couch for an hour, hour and a half, and sleeps. So I brought him this blanket. Well, after Eugene passed in October of 2018, the family sent it back to me. And so this is the blanket that he would take a nap under every day. And so just these kinds of stories that I was thinking I was going to get sort of a disengaged scholar from a distance. And this is a man who saw a young pastor 50 years younger than him, almost exactly. He took me in, he blessed me, he challenged me, but he pastored me, and I'll be changed for the rest of my life because of it.
Well, thank you for just being honest and transparent and sharing that beautiful story, that part of your journey. It's just fun to get some behind the scenes kind of feedback on who Eugene was, and I think that's really one of the key things we experience, especially when we encounter older sages or people who've just been at the ministry, people who are you know 20, 30, 40, 50 years further down the road. I always find it's encouraging when I see that somebody is the same person behind the scenes as they are on the stage, as they are in the pulpit. When there is that consistency in life, it gives you hope that there are real, true, honest people out there, because not everybody is like that.
Right. Yeah. Some of the people that I've seen on the stages and on the television, I've been in the green room with them. And as the pastor's kid, I was in the green room. I was back there having dinner after the service. And these are some of the saddest human beings I've ever been with. Most dynamic and charismatic and light up a room and beautifully gifted. And you go back and it's just a shell. And I think that, Eugene, what I love about his legacy and what has provoked me about him is he got to 85 years old, married to the same woman, in love with his children, in love with his grandchildren, vibrantly in love with the church, doing some of his best work at the end. And he was pastoral and he was joyful. He had a laugh and a smile that would just electrify a room. He laid hands on me and anointed me with oil as an 85-year-old, made the sign of the cross on my head and just prayed blessing over me. And I thought, this is what I want to be like when I'm 85. And one of the great burdens of this book is young folks, like us who are pushing in our strength, years of strength, and we're going hard. What we need is we need an example. We need an icon. And I say this in the Greek New Testament word kind of sense, icon, not LeBron James icon. Like we need icons who have gone before us, who have lived, as Eugene wrote, a long obedience in the same direction, who have come to the end of their race. And like Paul can say, I've fought the fight, I've run the race, I've kept the faith. And now there's in store for me a crown of righteousness. And those people who are willing to take young folks like you and I in and bless us and tell us it's going to be okay and tell us their stories. And we need sages, we need those icons who can help us understand how to navigate the terrain of the big push that we're in right now. Because if we just do it with our peers, if it's just you and me sort of taking care of each other, Shaun, same stage of life, and we miss out on the larger narrative that a sage can give us. So I just think one of the great burdens I have is to tell folks who are pushing in the years of their strength to make sure you have someone who's logged miles with God, who can tell you it's going to be okay, honey. They can tell you their stories. They can gently correct you. You give them permission, give them access to tighten you up. And you look up at the end of those years and you go, you know what? Somehow I made it. We need our sages.
Well, I think when people get into their mid 30s and into their 40s and beyond, you get to a place where no matter how much energy, hustle, drive, or push you have, you come up against things that require wisdom, that require experience. And oftentimes that wisdom and experience it's got to come from somebody who was in your shoes, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. So I love the backstory. I love what you're pouring into the book. I don't want to run out of time to make sure we give people a kind of a preview of what they're going to encounter. So let's get into some of the meat that folks are going to read in the book. And so this next part, let's have a bunch of why questions, if you will. So why is it wise to ask for help? I think we're in a season now where people are more willing to ask for help as we walk through the coronavirus outbreak pandemic, if you will. But typically Americans, we want to be self-sufficient and we're going to do it on our own and we're going to, bootstrapping it and all of that. But rather than always going it alone, why is it wise to ask for help?
James 1, whoever lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. Let him ask, who graciously gives without finding fault. Jesus, ask and you shall receive. Seek and you'll find. Knock and the door will be open to you. So yeah, you're going, yeah, that's Bible stuff. Well, Steve Jobs at the end of his life was doing an interview and he told the story of being a 12-year-old kid. And Mr. Bill Hewlett Packard, lived across town. And Bill Hewlett's name was in the phone book. And Steve Jobs is 12, open it up, and there's Hewlett's name and number and his home. He calls the home number, and Hewlett picks up and he says, "Hi, this is Bill." And he goes, "Hi, I'm Steve Jobs. I'm 12, and I want to build a frequency counter, and I know you have parts. Will you give me parts?" And Bill Hewlett said, "Man, this is some chutzpah. A 12-year-old? Absolutely. In fact, son, let me hire you this summer." And he hired him to work the assembly line. Steve Jobs became Steve Jobs because he asked. And he carried himself with what I write in the book with a holy presumption. And all the people that I know that I want to be like are people, they're not presumptuous, but they're people who will be sort of in a holy way. They'll presume that you will be willing to help. So just throw yourself in the way of people who can raise you up and challenge you. So we live in a world that says to ask for help is a sign of weakness, but we live in a kingdom of God that says to ask for help is a sign of great wisdom and maturity and strength. So ask. There are people who've lived it and done it.
Next, let's talk about why it's wise to work for wisdom. I think in terms of anything in life, we get out of it what we invest into it, whether it's time or money or effort, and nothing comes cheaply that is of value and worthwhile. So when it comes to wisdom, a lot of us aren't intentionally pursuing that or working for that. So why is it wise to work for wisdom?
Because like you said, all the good stuff is worth fighting for. All the good stuff takes hard work. All the good stuff takes a long time. I mean, my kids buy these little trinket toys on Amazon for 99 cents and they get shipped over they're horribly made and they break down 2 days in. Buy once, cry once. Like, if you want it, if it's going to be valuable, if it's going to last, if it's going to stand the test of time, spend the money, spend the effort, spend your blood, sweat, and tears, and pour yourself into the thing. And it's going to cost you everything, but you'll cry once instead of crying multiple times because the thing keeps breaking down. So I write about Mr. Miyagi with Daniel-san. Mr. Miyagi, like, yeah, I'll train you, but you know what it's going to cost you, right? And Eugene did that to me. Yes, but not so fast, period. So sages know how to engage the energy and the strength of their young apprentices. And the young apprentices, after putting all that work in, will show up years later having been forged in the fire of that hard work. So we just know the important stuff is worth working for.
Well, and the last of our why questions, why is it wise to read the dead people? Now, I work in publishing. I want people to be reading all the books from my authors who are still alive, but they're in terms of scandal and fallout and problems. One, dead people aren't gonna, be on the front page next week, generally speaking. So that's not the reason why. But why is it wise to read the dead people?
Yeah, I think it's wise to read the dead people because their works have stood the test of time. We live in a world of great fashion and fad. We live in a world of the news ticker and we live in a world of the news cycle. And if you can get the story out well, you can convince people that you should be read. And look, you and I are in publishing. We stand by our products. We poured our lives into this, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I suggest to people a rhythm of read one dead person, read one alive person, and go back and forth. And what you do is you acquaint yourself with the larger narrative arc of the Christian story. You need to know what was going on in the 4th century with Augustine. You need to know what was going on with Brother Lawrence. You need to know what was going on with Thomas à Kempis. You need to know Teresa of Avila. And so the ways we do this is we throw ourselves back, we find ourselves rooted in their stories. And what I think we get is a larger context for where we fit in the story. Because if we don't read the dead people, we think that the kingdom of God and the world is about my little tunnel vision. And actually, no, this is a long story that we've been engrafted into, and our story will fade away and other people will come. And so acquaint yourself with the larger Christian story. Read the dead people.
Daniel, in terms of the reader's journey, journey with the book, when they get to the last page, how will you know that you've succeeded? How will their life be shifted or changed? What's different?
What's different is the older saints and sages find the dignity and the need of their gifting. And the folks who are in their years of strength find the humility to ask. And what happens is the generations are brought together, and there's purpose for the elders, and there's passion and all of the energy from the young ones, and that's brought together. And I think if it's going to be kingdom of God, like, there's going to be an Abraham and an Isaac and a Jacob at the table. I think intergenerational life is a must. And I think right now we live in a moment where peer group is like the thing, and we're celebrating youth and celebrity in our culture. And we've told all the old people to go off and play more golf and to take more trips. And basically your work here is done. And I think that is a desecration. I think we got to give people a chance to be those 85-year-olds that are vibrant and alive and have purpose. And we've got to teach our young ones how to engage and to prime the pump and draw those stories out of the older sages. And you look up and both sides win. And so I would just encourage you young ones to chase wisdom, to ask the question, to go find the people that you want to be like and pursue them. And I would encourage the elder saints among us to be available, to keep your eyes open, be willing to take someone out to lunch and share your stories. And when the two do this, it's a beautiful connection. So chase wisdom, brothers and sisters.
That's a fantastic call to action. And my encouragement would be, we're at a time, whether we're talking about the church, whether we're talking about the workplace, we have 4 generations active right now, from the baby boomers on down to the Gen Zs. And so there's a lot of opportunity for wisdom transformation and sharing. And so if you have people that can pour into your life, not everybody's going to be available, but it never hurts to ask. Because if I've learned anything interviewing hundreds of authors through the years, people like to tell their stories. People like to share their wisdom. And if you don't ask, you're never going to know. And you'll miss out. Maybe you're that next Steve Jobs who has access to somebody across town that could change your life, but you just weren't willing to ask. So step out, be bold, and see what kind of doors God opens up for you. Daniel, for the listeners who'd like to connect with you, find out more about your church, find out more about your book, where are some of the places you hang out on the web?
Yeah, chasingwisdombook.com is the webpage that you can go to and read up about the book. I've got a video on there and some endorsements. And so chasingwisdombook.com. And then on social media, Mr. Daniel Grothe, MrDanielGrothe. Would love to connect with any and all of you.
And like we do with every episode, we'll have detailed links in the show notes, places where you can connect with Daniel and pick up your own copy of the book. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Daniel Grothe. Once again, our book today was Chasing Wisdom, The Lifelong Pursuit of Living Well. Again, if you'd like to connect with Daniel and find out more, a great place to start is the book's website. You can check that out over at chasingwisdombook.com. And Daniel, I just want to say thanks so much for sharing with us today. It's truly been a great honor to have you on the show.
John, you're a legend. Thank you so much.